There's a lot of excitement across the board in Iran. I mean, both the hardline faction and the so-called reformist moderate faction are very interested in, hopefully, from their perspective, getting a deal signed with the world powers. The big question is, what happens if there is a deal? What happens the day after? I think for the hardliners, as far as Iranian policy in the region is concerned, a nuclear deal does not necessarily mean any changes to Iran's behavior in places like Iraq and Syria. They're going to continue doing what they've done, and they feel that's the right path forward. But if you listen to the rhetoric from people coming from the foreign ministry and the moderate wing of the Islamic Republic, they're in disagreement with that point. They feel that a nuclear agreement is only the beginning of something larger in terms of bringing Iran back to the international and certainly regional mainstream. So they want to talk to the likes of Saudi Arabia and Turkey and others in the region who have concerns about what Iran is doing. In Washington, we don't talk enough about the pressure that the Iranian nuclear negotiators are under from their own hardliners back home in Tehran. There are hardliners literally waiting for Zarif to go back home to Tehran with a deal that might not be seen as a strong one from Iranian perspective, so they can attack him and label him a traitor. So the moderates, including Foreign Minister Zarif and President Rouhani himself, have to be answerable to the hardliners, and that's where it becomes tricky. I think fundamentally what's most important to them is a political message that comes from Tehran, which is, we were told we couldn't have a nuclear program, well, we did it anyway and got away with it. It's a question of national pride. It's a question about political legitimacy in the eyes of the rulers of Iran. And I think a deal that makes Iran have a few thousand less centrifuges, but allows it nonetheless to spin those centrifuges, in many ways is a win for them politically. And that might just be good enough from Ayatollah Khamenei's perspective. The United States has had concerns about Iranian behavior for 36 years, going back before the Iranian nuclear program became an issue, relating to Iran's support for terrorism and its behavior in the region and so forth. And I think that's where the problem is. Even if there is a deal, if there isn't change in Iran's attitude elsewhere, what does it really fundamentally change in the sort of overall hostility that the U.S. has had towards the Iranian regime going back to 1979? If there is a nuclear deal, I mean, the hope would be that the Iranians and the Americans can work more closely together in terms of the fight against the Islamic State. And in a best case scenario, that probably is something that is feasible given how both Iran and the United States pretty much share the same anxieties about the Islamic State and the need to neutralize that movement. But as soon as that is achieved, if that is achieved, then you have to turn your attention to the Islamic State in Syria. And everything becomes so much more complicated because the Iranians are dedicated to President Assad's survival. The United States wants Assad out one way or another. So I don't think we can expect some sort of an open-ended cooperation. Even if cooperation happens in Iraq, it's very likely to come to an abrupt, quick end as soon as that operation in Iraq is over. The question is, can it move on to Syria? And the likely answer to that is no, it cannot, because there's too much of difference between the Iranian and American viewpoints in terms of the future of Syria.